Prestaya, Radha Krishna Prestayate.
Namo Siddhaswarupananda, Paramahamsa Namine, Swarupaya, Radha Krishna Prestayate.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya.
Bhajan Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shiva Sadekur Vrinda.
Bhajan Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shiva Sadekur Vrinda.
Gopala Govinda Rama,
Hari Bol Krishna,
Madana Mohana.
Hari Bol Krishna,
Gopala Govinda Rama,
Hari Bol Krishna,
Madana Mohana.
Gopala Govinda Rama.
So when one comes in contact with the pure loving servant of the Supreme Person, coming through the line of spiritual master, parampara or the descending process, one's heart becomes purified and one's outlook is now getting clearer and clearer because of understanding his true transcendental nature as eternally life, the spirit soul. And not only that, about his position as eternally the loving servant of the Supreme Person. But because of our conditioning in this material world, our senses, our mind, our whole focus has been a drive gliding towards this material world. And it is being reinforced by our own will and following the desires in the mind that we are falsely following, trying to fill up the longing of the spirit soul to be connected with life. Because this contamination of materialism is based upon our conditioning of trying to lord over material nature. So Lord Krishna allows us to play false lord, surrogate God. And now we have this opportunity to be blessed to receive this love and affection that will connect us with our heart, our life, to be situated in an eternal, transcendental consciousness that is free from material conditioning. So the process is given to us through scripture, the Mahamantra. It draws the mind away from matter. Not only that, it connects us with following the instruction of Lord Krishna through the guidance of his spirit, his loving servant. So the reason I like to discuss this, because all of us, deep within our heart, we want success. We want to be situated in a condition of security, to be able to experience love and protection, but to be able to enter the world that is transcendental, we must become free from material conditioning. We must become free from material desires. And it is achieved through the mercy of the holy names that purifies the heart and the mind, that we can now be able to direct our lives, our heart, our focus, our meditation in the midst of adversity, of what is happening in this world, the miseries, especially the influence of the modes of material nature, that we're able to take shelter in humbleness, to be clinging, to be directing our lives, to be protected by our eternal friend, Krishna, Govinda, and his eternal associates, the resident of Vrindavan. So we are advised here to follow the footsteps of previous acharyas, a resident of the spiritual world. So from hearing from the bona fide spiritual master, our senses becomes purified. Our heart begins to experience this longing or enthusiasm. Our faith becomes very, very strong to do what is pleasing to the person whom we're trying to follow, or we're following, especially doing what he wants, the wish, the desire of the Supreme Person. But to be able to come to that point, we must first transcend this material consciousness that has covered us, this material disease of false bodily identification. No way we can enter the transcendental world with material contamination, because that world is transcendental or not of this world. It's the world of life. And we must become free from this desire to manipulate matter, to play Lord, because it will separate us from this service attitude of humbleness to render and offer our life, our heart, to please the Supreme Person. It is very hard to offer one's heart to someone if we don't know that person and it's all vague or blurry. So the process of purification of the chanting of the holy names restates us in our true transcendental nature, because it will be a realization of life. And then from there we can have this foundation to decide that yes, my activities previously that leads me to trying to secure control in the survival for existence, it's all an illusion, because I am a different energy from matter. And my whole goal in life is to be secured in the temporary, moving, material world, which I can see with clarity when I begin to chant the holy names. So the first realization is understanding who we really are. Until and unless we don't know who we really are, then it will be very hard for us. It's futile to be very fixed, because we don't know where we are going. So here, we're given advice by the spiritual master, how we can be protected. First of all, we're given this instruction by Lord Krishna out of His love for us, that we must follow His loving confidential friend, the resident of Vrindavan, following the footsteps of the saintly person whose heart, whose love is simply focused with a transcendental, eternal relationship of rendering loving service to the Supreme Person, unflinching, undebated devotional service. So we can only enter that world if we follow someone who can guide us to be an apprentice, to practice, to learn this science from someone who's loving the Supreme Person purely. And that is the instruction of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. One must search out a bona fide spiritual master. So when we come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, he gives us a process wherein we can meditate, think, and remember. So the process we do, it will be the process that will help us in our thinking, in our feeling, in our willing, because now our thinking, our feeling, and our willing, which is the activities of the mind and the person who previously is following the dictates of the mind and the desire, will now be able to direct it upon what will connect one's heart with what is eternal. And what is eternal? His loving relationship with the Supreme Person, that even though he leaves this body, if we leave this body, it will continue. So that is, we transcend the struggle for survival, because at the time we chant, we follow this process, our connection with the Supreme Person is reestablished through the chanting of the holy names. That is the science that has been stated in the Puranas, wherein it's stated that Harinama, Harinama, Eva Kevalam, Kolowana Steva, Nagasteva, Gatiranyata. There is no other alternative, there is no other alternative, there is no other alternative to achieve pure loving devotional service except through the chanting of the Mahamantra. God Himself, the Supreme Purifier, comes to purify us from all this material conditioning. Just like if you're in darkness, you go outside in the presence of light, then you can see. So the spiritual master advises, Lord Krishna, the eternal, there's only one spiritual master, Lord Krishna, our eternal friend, our eternal master. But we're not able, for so long, we're not able to experience this loving service because our heart, our focus is directed upon this world. It is false ego, our extended false ego, thinking my son, my daughter, my husband. We're not appreciating that all this connection based upon these bodily labels will be cut off at the time we leave this body. And not only that, we are under the jurisdiction of material nature. And the consciousness that we are having due to the contamination of the modes of material nature will determine what situation we'll be in. And it's a very sad, pathetic situation wherein the spirit soul who is life, living, trying to model, trying to experience happiness where there is none. So the reason I wanted to read this is because we will be now discussing what is beyond loss. In this material world, two individuals, they meet together, they marry, and they think about love. And there's a wrong connotation about love because it's always centered around sexual contact, sexual intercourse. But blood has nothing to do with love. Sexual contact is progeny. And when a person becomes servant of his genitals, it is a venue wherein the living entity tries to express his anger through releasing his anger through the genitals, and he becomes frustrated because the venue or the avenue wherein he tries to find fulfillment will not give connection with life. And he becomes frustrated and angry. That's why we have been discussing previously about what is love, pure love. It is transcendental to this material lust, but we must first understand the difference between life and matter. Until and unless we don't know the difference between life and matter, let's not talk about a pure loving relationship with the Supreme Person. That's why our Gurudev first taught us, he wrote this, he put this into writing, the book, Who Am I? The Science of the Soul. Because that will be the foundation of our relationship with the Supreme Person that is transcendental from all this material covering based upon the modes of material nature, based upon this gross matter, subtle matter. When we speak about gross matter, this body made out of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. When the living entity identifies himself as this body. So we will never be entering that world of pure devotion when we are in this material conditioning. Because our focus will be a search for a different energy that is different from us. And we try to experience that through the senses. We become enslaved by the modes of material nature because we become enslaved by the senses and the mind. We now model in this dark world of matter. So all the living entities here, the reason we discuss about struggle for survival, because we are all immersed in this ocean of birth and death, blinded by the desire, this longing for someone to love and serve, but it's misdirected through the senses. And not only that, it's misdirected upon ourselves because we want to experience this fulfillment through this selfish method of trying to squeeze happiness for our own personal interest. That is not our position. That's why after understanding our true identity, the spiritual master teaches us about our position. And we can look clearly, with clarity. We are always dominated. No one here is the dominator, false dominator of one's wife, one's husband. But in reality, one is dominated by material nature because one becomes encumbered and enslaved by the senses. And in illusion thinking, I'm the dominator. I'm enjoying. So how can we get this clarity? It's not by following someone who is also blind. It is through the process of receiving this information from God Himself and His pure loving servant, the devotee of God. And now we'll read here why Lord Chaitanya came here. Okay. Because for so long, we've been discussing about this miserable world. So now we'll discuss here the feelings, the understanding, the relationship of someone who is on this different world, a different world of life that is eternal. And that life, that world is what the Holy Names is all about. That is what is the reason Lord Chaitanya came here. It is about His pleasure and the pleasure of the devotee serving Him. So now we check in with ourselves. What is your happiness? What is your pleasure? Is your pleasure just to get something for you and offer it to someone else? Based upon thinking, my son, my daughter. Okay? I'm not saying you should not work, you should not take responsibility. But the consciousness, our whole focus. So what then is a devotee? So to know what is a devotee, we must become real devotees. We must become purified from this material conditioning. And this is achieved when we follow the footsteps of the saintly person. Because the first effect is we become enthusiastic. Meaning, our faith will be very fixed. Our hearts longing will be very fixed in pleasing God. Then we can see that every day of our life, we can see we can weigh how the mind dictates us, how our heart, our love, which is so frail now, becoming stronger and stronger in meditation by following the instruction of our Gurudev, becomes very fixed that we are able to negate, to discard. Our gravitation now is not upon this material world anymore, but rather we use this material energy and it is connected where we gravitate, meaning gravity, where we are focused. We use this body, this mind to please God. And it's very hard because material nature is very powerful. Material desire is so powerful because it is always a promise of enjoyment. It is always Maya's impetus to give us this, like when you're in this, you're watching in FB, then you see discard, okay? Because it's the situation now is everybody's into YouTube, FB, and then when you're doing something, there's this impetus given to you in front. Buy this, taste this, have this. And someone who's also into Googling, okay, Miss Google or Mr. Google, who uses his mind thinking he's so great, okay? When you do something, he gives you impetus also by putting forward what he thinks is right. So you're not interested anymore. Because when you are becoming very fixed in your love for Lord Krishna, your love will be gliding towards doing what is pleasing to Him. And you can check that, meaning all of us here are individuals. It's not a group thing. It is an individual responsibility to relate to God. Now, what kind of relationship? Will it be a relationship of humbleness and taking shelter of Him fully? And is our faith becoming very fixed? Meaning our enthusiasm to do what is pleasing to God is being enthused. Okay? You know what's enthused? May gana ba? Pero if not, then it becomes just a ritual. You go to the place where there is the glorification of the holy names. It's just, okay, I'm just biding my time. Okay? I'm just biding my time. It is a means so I can achieve what I think will be my shelter and protection. Okay? So it's just there. Then after that, you go head on in the struggle for survival. Okay? And it's already there, waiting for the body that you're using for your struggle for survival. the funeral parlor, okay, the crematorium, the hospital. So we become aware, what is this struggle all about? So when the living entity realize that, yes, what is inseparable for me is my love, my happiness. Your love is your happiness. But it can never be satisfied when it is centered around yourself. I, me, mine. Okay? I, me, my happiness. Me, mine, my happiness. My family, my false ego, extended false ego. I, me, mine. Okay? But the struggle for survival is based upon the embrace of death. I, me, mine. And then you leave the body. But how come we cannot see that? Because our heart has become covered by materialism, material disease. We're not able to experience this affection for the Supreme Person. That's why we become still-hearted. You know what still? Cold-hearted, hard-hearted. So when we make progress in the chanting of the holy names, we are able to appreciate what love is through hearing the glories of the devotees of God. Not only that, our faith becomes so strong because our faith now is based upon what is eternal, not based upon the mind and our control. So look closely. You're given this opportunity and you think, oh, I'm on my own. So this disease of I, me, mine. So even in tears, you know what, in tears, somebody you love leaves. You cry, oh, I'm sad. Oh, why did you leave me? Okay? In tears, okay? It's all painful. You're not self-sufficient. You're not the source of happiness. And your eternal position, you will always be looking for someone to offer your love, to render service. But now it's centered around you. I, me, mine. So you think you're God. My enjoyment. But it's all accompanied with misery. Because the miseries will always be miseries caused by the mind, miseries caused by other living entities. Okay? You think you're enjoying, controlling, and somebody file a case against you. Okay? Or somebody takes away everything that you have accumulated temporarily. So that is just an opening statement so we can check what is suffering and what is happiness. And happiness is based upon you, the person. And because we are in this body now, we definitely, this body is the source of suffering. We will be experiencing it, but our heart will not be gravitating towards this illusion of struggle for survival because we now know where to survive and how to survive will be under the protection of the Supreme Controller, the Supreme Person who loves us eternally. So we are very fixed. No matter what happens, everything's taken away, then no problem. This statement, we'll discuss it tomorrow because there's still time. I'll read lang one, Bali Maharaj, the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj, his guru, Sukracharya, advised him not to do the will of God. Okay? Because Lord Vamana came as a young Brahmana, a young boy, and asked 3 steps of his kingdom. And Sukracharya advised Bali Maharaj, don't listen to this boy. He's the Supreme Person. If you give access to his desire, to what he's asking, 3 steps of your land, everything will be taken away from you. Okay? But because Bali Maharaj, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, is very faithful, his trust, his promise will never be broken, meaning his love and surrender for doing what he offers to Lord Krsna he will never waver. He's very fixed. He'd rather lose everything. He'd rather die than break his promise. Okay? So it meaning his relationship of loving surrender is transcendental. Okay? So that is the relationship that we must be longing to have, because that has been covered by our contamination of the contamination of materialism. So when Sukracharya, his guru, advisor, tells him, everything will be taken away from you. And Bali Maharaj said, it doesn't matter, because inevitably, all of this will be taken away from me sooner or later. Better now, I have no more load. So Krishna took all his load. All he had is his heart, his surrender to the Supreme Person. So when Lord Bhavana stepped on his first step on his land, the middle planetary system, he became so big. He was able to step on the middle planetary system because God is all powerful. And the second step is on the heavenly planet. And the kingdom of Bali Maharaj is in control of this universe. Okay. He's the king of the universe. He's so powerful. And Lord Bhamana asked him, where will I put my third step? And Bali Maharaj said, my dear Lord, you can put your third step on my head. Okay? Not flinching. You know what's flinching? Spontaneous. Are we like that? So there's this main unflinching. So meaning, at the time you leave this world, meaning you're gonna leave all your control, your husband, your family, everything. Will you be unflinching? That Krishna, let me serve you, let me love you. Please, I surrender it to you. That can only be achieved if you live a life of a devotee now, guided by the spiritual master. Because while we are in this body, we are living a life that is connected with the process that connects us in harmony with God's love for us and our service to Him, our heart, our life. So that's the discussion we discussed today. So I'll read here why Lord Chaitanya came here. So what world are we trying to enter? What do you want to achieve? Unflinching, undebated, pure devotional service. It can only be learned from the representative of God, the Guru Dev, who is a resident of the spiritual world. So when one listens to the teachings of the spiritual master, the saintly person coming from Lord Krishna, one's ear, one's heart becomes purified. That in this world, everything is changing, but he can now understand and appreciate where to be taking shelter. His heart. Because what's happening now, in the struggle for survival, you're taking shelter of the mind, the desire in the mind. And you have unlimited desire in the mind. Unlimited. So you cannot be very fixed in the direction that is simply a process of walking directly towards offering your heart, your whole being, to the Supreme Person by rendering service. So He makes it very easy for us. All we have to do is sing His glories, chant the holy names, and follow the process of devotional service. There's still time, okay? If whatever my devotees surrender unto me, in whatever way my devotees surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respect, O son of Pirta. Krishna was never ungrateful to the gopis, for as he declares to Arjuna in this verse from Bhagavad Gita, he reciprocates with his devotees in proportion to the transcendental loving service they render to him. Everyone follows the path that leads towards him, but there are different degrees of progress on that path. And the progress in approaching the ultimate goal is different, and therefore the promotion of realization of this goal, namely the absolute personality of Godhead, is also different. The gopis attain the highest goal, and Lord Chaitanya affirmed that there is no other higher method of worshiping God than followed by the gopis. So the path we do follow is the path of Lord Chaitanya. Our spiritual master is a resident of the spiritual world. And not only that, it is confirmed by scripture, that the spiritual master is Saktabesh Avatar, an empowered living entity who is not different from God. And he is the person who can teach us how to be pleasing to the Supreme Person, the pure loving servant of Lord Krishna. So when Lord Chaitanya was asked, who are you? Okay? And his answer is that, are you a sannyasi? Are you this? Are you that? No. Are you this level? No. I'm the eternal servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, 100 times servant of Radha and Krishna. So I'll read, there's still time. The promise has been broken by the worship of the gopis, as Lord Krishna admits. O gopis, I am not able to repay my debt to your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. So spiritual life or loving devotional service is the service itself. So here, Lord Krishna is telling us the compensation of the devotees, the service they offer to Lord Krishna. So all of us here, this service attitude is there, but it must be directed towards pleasing the Supreme Person. Service as the end itself. O gopis, I am not able to repay my debt for your spotless service even within a lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are very difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Sri Krishna himself when he returned to the gopis upon hearing their songs of separation. Now, whatever affection we see the gopis show in their own bodies, know it for certain to be only for the sake of Lord Krishna. The selfless love of Godhead exhibited by the gopis cannot have any parallel. We should not therefore misunderstand the carefulness of the gopis in their personal decoration. The gopis dress themselves as beautifully as possible just to make Krishna happy by seeing them. They have no other they had no ulterior desires. They dedicated their bodies and everything they possess to the service of Lord Shri Krishna, taking for granted that their bodies were meant for his enjoyment. They dressed themselves on the understanding that Krishna would be happy by seeing and touching them. The gopis think, I have offered this body to Lord Krishna. He is the owner and it brings him enjoyment. Krishna finds joy in seeing and touching this body. It is for this reason that they cleanse the body and they could decorate their bodies. O Arjuna, there are no greater receptacles of deep love for me than the gopis, who cleanses and decorate their bodies because they consider them mine. This verse is spoken by Lord Krishna in the Adi Purana. There is another wonderful feature of the emotion of the gopis. Its power is beyond the comprehension of the intelligence. When the gopis saw Lord Krishna, they derive unbounded bliss, although they have no desire for such pleasure. When the gopis see Lord Krishna, they derive unbounded bliss, although they have no desire for such pleasures. The gopis taste a pleasure of 10 million times greater than the pleasure of Lord Krishna derives from seeing them. The wonderful characteristics of the gopis are beyond imagination. They have no desire for personal satisfaction. Yet, when Krishna is happy by seeing them, that happiness of Krishna makes the gopis 1,000,000 times more happy than Krishna himself. The gopis have no inclination for their own enjoyment, and yet their joy increases. That is indeed a contradiction. For this contradiction, I see only one solution. The joy of the gopis lies in the joy of their beloved Krishna. The situation of the gopis is perplexing. For although they did not want personal happiness, it was imposed upon them. The solution of this perplexity is that Sri Krishna's sense of happiness is limited by the happiness of the gopis. Devotees at Vrindavan therefore try to serve the gopis, namely Radharani and her associates. If one gains the favor of the gopis, he easily gains the favor of Krishna, because on the recommendation of the gopis, Krishna at once accepts the service of the devotee. Lord Chaitanya therefore wanted to please the gopis instead of Krishna, but his contemporaries misunderstood him, and for this reason, Lord Chaitanya renounced the order of householder life and became a sannyasi. The gopis think Krishna has obtained so much pleasure by seeing me. That thought increases the fullness and beauty of their faces and bodies. The beauty of Lord Krishna increases at the sight of the beauty of the gopis. And the more the gopis see Lord Krishna's beauty, the more their beauty increases. In this way, a competition takes place between them in which no one acknowledges defeat. Unlimited, the pleasure of the Supreme Person is unlimited, and we can see here that devotional loving service, happiness is also unlimited. The loving reciprocation. So, how can we come to that point? When we follow someone who is a resident of Vrindavan, by following the footsteps of the saintly person, accepting a bona fide spiritual master, and the bona fide spiritual master is a pure loving servant of the Supreme Person. And how do we see the bona fide spiritual master? How can we know that this person is a bona fide spiritual master? Through the guidance of Scripture and the Lord Himself. If you're given this opportunity to come in contact with this path, this science, and what has been given by the instructing spiritual master in Scripture, and you see this person, our Gurudev, all the qualities of a bona fide spiritual master as discussed and advised, given to us with wisdom by Saint Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, the saintly person, guided by the Lord within the heart, and even for a moment, this person is my dear loving representative. And when we follow this person by faithfully surrendering, listening submissively about his instruction, how we can do what is pleasing to the Supreme Person, we become enthusiastic to render service. Because the bona fide spiritual master has this potency to enthuse us to do and please the Supreme Person. So if a person is not a bona fide spiritual master, who is not a pure loving servant of the Supreme Person, he can have all of these accolades, all this knowledge and wisdom, but he can never change a person's heart from a lover of mammon or a materialistic person into being enthusiastic to offers one love, one's heart, whole being to do what is pleasing to God. Only the devotee of God can influence someone to love God because he's loving the Supreme Person. He can change people's heart. Why? Because Krishna is pleased when we acknowledge and faithfully follow and surrender to His loving servant. It's a word of relationship. So the more we listen, the more we follow the desire of the pure loving servant, the Gurudev, who is a resident of the spiritual world, the close associate of Lord Krishna, the dearmost disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who have influenced, changed people's heart to be focused to rendering loving service to the Supreme Person, to be protected by God's love, by the holy names. They become enthusiastic to carry on daily in their lives that transcends time. Because now the person comes to the point, this is what I should be doing, because his enthusiasm increases every day. His faith becomes very fixed. It's not a faith anymore that is been a shelter of the mind, but rather a faith that is one's heart, one's whole being, in humbleness, taking shelter of God's protection. And that is achieved through the chanting of the holy names. So when we make progress in this path, the more we become enthusiastic to chant the holy names. May gana tayo, pero pag wala, you will be desire-driven because the mind, material nature is very powerful. You will gravitate towards trying to find protection with your own self because you're self-centered. We're self-centered. And our protection is trying to grasp what we have been struggling eternally here in this material world, in this universe, the struggle for survival to find happiness in this temporary material energy. So, from now on, to those of you who have been listening about this miserable world, let's put a stop to discussing about this miserable world because it is a different energy from us. Our focus now should be with what is inseparable from us. It is about the pleasure of God seeing us rendering service to Him. So that's why in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells us, abandon all varieties of religion. Well, there are only two religion, materialism, about our selfishness, and real religion, spiritual life, our eternal relationship with God. So while we have been here for so long, when we make progress, we are able to glide towards the will, the desire of the Supreme Person, guided by our spiritual master, because our meditation is to be pleasing, to do the will of God. And that is an individual experience all of us must experience every day, every moment of our life. What we do, how we eat, how we take care of this body. It is simply for the pleasure of the Supreme Person. Although with clear understanding, we do understand that God is fully independent. He's not dependent upon us. He's self-sufficient. But He loves us. And His happiness is when we render service to Him. That is devotional service. So we ask this question, am I gliding toward this path? Am I being guided by Parampara or my spiritual master? Do I have this enthusiasm in my heart, or I'm still wavering? Wavering where I can put, where can I be gravitating? We must not waver because the shelter must be very fixed. It's about our eternal world of pure devotional service in harmony with the pleasure of God. In the beginning, we don't have that inclination. But somewhere along the line, after hearing this science, because this science is living, somewhere along the line, when we are not making effort, we are distracted, we carry on with our own lives to do our will. But somewhere along the line, we meet this crossroad. When your body gets sick, you have cancer. Okay? When your loved ones their body begins to fail, they leave. And when your love directed upon that person is not satisfied, and that person also is dissatisfied with that relationship, you're on a crossroad now. But you have heard this truth, this eternal truth about where and whom you can love eternally, who's there waiting for you, waiting for us. He's just there. So, Lord Krishna tells us this guidance. Listen to my loving servant, follow him, render service to him. So it's also akin to the world we came from, this Christian world. When Lord Jesus Christ was asked, how do we know you're from God? And Jesus tells them, if you want to do the will of the Father, you can see me as the representative of God, the Son of God. And if you reject me, the Father who sent me will reject you. It's a relationship. So the spiritual master is making effort because it is inseparable from his love, loving us because he loves the Supreme Person. That's why the teaching of Christianity is love the Father with thy whole heart, thy whole mind, thy whole being. And second unto that is loving your brothers, your sister, everybody else as you love yourself. So it's natural for someone who is the representative of God to love us eternally because he's loving the Father. And what are the symptoms of that love? Compassion. Compassion means he cares for us. He wishes us well. What motivates a person to carry on and glorify God and to do the preaching program to help people? If it is passion, desire, the mode of passion, it will not last because it's based upon lust. And after that, the desire are there, then after that is gone. But real love is spontaneous, unwavering. So the fruit is that of really loving the Supreme Person, the motivation is compassion, giving us life. Because the spiritual master is self-sufficient. He's completely under the protection of the Supreme Person. And what is that self-sufficiency? It is his love that pleases the Supreme Person. That the more he serves the Supreme Person, Lord Krishna is pleased. And it is a continuous world of pleasing and loving one another that gives pleasure to the devotee. It's eternal and spontaneous. But if it's passion, it's different because the motivation has material consideration. I want followers, so I have control. I want followers because I can experience this power, money, okay? The tithing, okay? You take shelter of this world. To enter the world of pure devotion, we must be guided by Lord Krishna himself. Service as the end itself, because what is inseparable for us is this service-loving attitude. And when we direct it upon the Supreme Person through the chanting of the holy names, we will enter that world through revelation. The Supreme Person descends, gives us clarity, because it is His promise. Lord Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita, to those who are constantly devoted unto me, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. But that understanding is not just simply an understanding of knowing the miserable world of our identity. It is about the understanding of how sweet it is to render service to the Supreme Person. How sweet it is to be amiably rendering service to His loving servant. And we can only enter that world when we chant the holy names. Haribol, Namaste.
Everybody sing Haribol Krishna. Embrace Krishna to your life. Namo Siddhaswarupananda, Paramahamsa Navine, Gora Karuna Swarupaya,
Radha Krishna Prestayate. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya,
Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya,
Haribol, everybody sing. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya,
Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Caitanya.
Bhakti Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Vrinda.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Vrinda.
Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana. Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Goranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Goranga. Jaya Jaya Shila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Shila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa, Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa. Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Naminehi Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prestayate
Namo Siddhaswarupananda.